This is a Shoosmiths podcast.
Hi, welcome. Happy New Year. Welcome to Shoospeak HR. Amy, how have we got to February?
I've no idea. I kind of blinked and I missed January completely.
Amy Anderson and I are here today together alone without the support of Amy Leach, who is, I think, moving house actually this week. So, Amy, I'm sure you'll be tuning in. Hope that's going well. What we're going to talk about today is virtual hearings and how we see them, what experience we have, what the future looks like, and our top tips. So, Amy, do you want to just give a kind of brief overview of how virtual hearings are working?
Yeah, sure. And I think we've obviously done a fair few of them now as a team between us, and it seems to have in the main worked quite well, and it's not as daunting an experience, I think, as potentially some people will think. So just to kind of run through the process very briefly, as you would normally, you would get your notice of hearing, which will contain a link to take you to the CVP platform. You then type in your access code when prompted, so that makes sure you're getting into the right hearing and not ending up in a hearing that you're not meant to be in. You then add in some personal details, again, all as prompted, similarly to what you would do on any other video calling platform. And then what will happen is that you will enter a waiting room with the other people that have dialed in. And similarly to what would happen in person, the tribunal clerk will then enter the waiting room and start to take people's details from them so that they can understand who's there, who they're waiting for, and what needs to happen next. Once everybody's in the waiting room, the clerk will then do whatever they do at their end, which will advance everybody into kind of the hearing, which will be where the judge is. As I say, everything has worked quite straightforwardly when I've done these remote hearings, but there is a technical support number, etc. Everything on the notice of hearing that you can use should you need to. But as I say, thankfully, I've not had to call the tribunal's tech support helpline as yet.
No, I think, kind of, and as I see it from way back in March 2020, when this first became a thing, I can see that the tribunal system is becoming more and more sophisticated with its approach. They are a lot slicker, as you would expect. Judges, much like in normal tribunals, will manage it in their own way. They will have their own styles. They will want things to be done in a certain way. What I'm finding more and more is judges want you to not just put your name in. For example, they will want Andy Graham, open brackets, solicitor for the respondent, close brackets, and if you're a witness or if you're just an observer, they're wanting that in as part of your name to allow them to manage the process. Google Chrome is key. Lots of people, if they do fail to kind of connect, it's because of not having it on the Google Chrome search engine. So I would always say that. And then experiences. So I had one of the pleasures, is that the best description, of probably being one of the first to do a substantive hearing. And I popped that on LinkedIn earlier, last year now, and had all sorts of people kind of messaging me out of the blue, old colleagues, barristers who I'd forgotten I'd linked in with, asking for, how did it go? Because it was so abnormal. But now I think lots of people are getting more and more experiences. So the range of hearings I have done, case management, preliminary hearings, for me, I can't see us not doing that virtually going forwards. I had a day in the summer last year. I had a case management hearing in Bristol, one in East London, and one in Newcastle. Ordinarily, that would have involved three of us traipsing off, incurring the time, incurring the travel costs of going to those three separate in-person hearings. I did it all from my upstairs bedroom. I'm pointing, I don't know why, Amy, because
I was going to say, yeah, you went to Bristol, you went to London, all from the comfort of your upstairs room.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of, it is more efficient. And certainly for those kind of hearings, we'll probably come on to what we think, whether this is here to stay for all kind of hearings. But yeah, certainly preliminary hearings, case management type hearings, absolutely, it is here to stay, in my opinion. The other experiences I've had relate to judicial mediation, and again, that worked, allowed people to be placed in different rooms, and people to have conversations, the judge to bounce in between the two, and then substantive hearings. So substantive hearings, obviously, they are essential, and you need to do all the things that you would in an ordinary hearing, whether that's as a witness, you're giving evidence and you have to kind of swear on the oath, or whether that's a holy Bible, or whether that's you're affirming the evidence. So giving that kind of evidence, for the witnesses, they have to be able to follow the normal process, albeit virtually. And then the bundle as well. This is something which all tribunals are now asking for, electronic bundles and hyperlinked versions, so that it is easy to navigate around that bundle. Now, obviously, that's fine if you've got enough screens in front of you. I think certainly when you are preparing for a hearing, it's worth speaking to witnesses, understanding what their preference is. Lots of people still prefer to have a paper copy in front of them, and inevitably that means a little bit of forward planning and printing more than you ordinarily would, because the witness would have one on their desk in front of them at real life hearings. It's not, obviously, there's no way of the tribunal kind of replicating that for each witness, but if you are preparing witnesses, then absolutely that's something that you should consider in advance, and making sure that they have those paper copies if that's what they want.
I'm definitely one of these people that does prefer, if I've got a large number of documents, would much prefer to have hard copies in front of me. I think my experience has been predominantly in like substantive preliminary hearings, where the bundle has been manageable on screen because it's only been, say, kind of 50 to 100 pages. But I think definitely for my personal preference will be, if there's much more than that, I do find it easier to be flicking through on a hard copy rather than trying to track through on bundles. But obviously, like you say, that's not to say that the tribunal don't still want the soft copy and that everybody doesn't still have to have the soft copy. It's just from a personal preference point of view, making sure that you're organised if you want a hard copy as well.
No, absolutely. And I guess the other thing to note, disclosure and bundles, is the virtual hearings that I've been at are no different to real life hearings where additional evidence suddenly arrives. When people's minds are focused, they can find these emails, they can find these particular documents. So we've had that, and the tribunal have been really good, and kind of it's a case of email it to the other side, take a short adjournment, email it to the judge, make sure that everybody's got a copy, and then carry on. So it doesn't change the process of late disclosure too much, you'll be pleased to hear. So, I mean, for me, I think virtual hearings are here to stay. Amy?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think there's always going to be, I think, going forward for substantive preliminary hearings and the more basic hearings, a desire for people to do them via CVP, because, as you say, it does save a lot of travel time. It does save a lot of cost to parties in terms of actually not having to travel. If you, like you say, for example, had to travel to Bristol, there would have been additional costs involved in that. I thought it was quite interesting. You said you'd had a 5-day as well, which is definitely the longest hearing I've heard of somebody doing via CVP, which again you said had worked quite well. I know it didn't quite last for the full 5 days, but the duration of it, you said, was managed quite well, and you don't see that there's any reason why hearings of that length shouldn't continue to be via CVP.
No, I don't. And yeah, like I say, it was listed for 5 days, and it went for circa 3 days. That was for all sorts of reasons. But had it 5 days, would that have been a problem? No, I don't think it would. I think judges are mindful, and certainly when they're listing, they are mindful that having a virtual hearing can be quite intense, and they build in break times for kind of for the witnesses as much as anything, but equally for the advocates. So that's helpful. So in one sense, kind of we're being more efficient in terms of resourcing. In another, we're having to list these hearings for longer. But I think that's right. I think people do need to take a break. I have a theory, and it applies to both hearings and to any kind of Zoom meetings that people have, or any video conferencing. And my conclusion is that in a normal meeting, you don't have to put your own face, whereas in any kind of video platform, it's staring straight back at you, and I think that tires. It certainly tires me out. I never have to. I never have to put up with that in a face-to-face meeting. So yeah, that's my conclusion. That yeah, you come away from them and you are quite exhausted, but that's not unusual for a hearing itself as well. So I do think they're here to stay. Absolutely. The only kind of slight wrinkle in that thought process was because I was having a conversation with a judge the other week actually, and kind of we were into downtime, just having a conversation. Everything had been done, and he asked my opinion on the video CVP platform and how that was working for me as a solicitor. I gave my opinion, and it was consistent with what I've just said, in so much as it's working well. I like them, and I think they are here to stay. He largely agreed, albeit did flag that it's a lot harder for him as a judge to kind of do what he's primarily there to do, i.e. be the judge. He's having to manage the system. He's having to kind of get people in and out of the lobby. He's having to make sure he's got 2 or 3 screens in front of him to be able to look at documents. And what he felt to miss was actually being able to look at the witnesses giving evidence and to read their body language, and not to be kind of looking away at documents when they were giving evidence. And so he says for him, it makes the job a lot harder, and questions whether he gets the full picture from a witness's evidence, which I can see. Body language is a big thing, which kind of is still there to some extent, but obviously a number of people at the hearing means that the photos or the videos that you're looking at prints rather than anything substantive. One option, I guess, to that is to make sure that the CVP link works such that when the claimant or any other witness is giving evidence, that there's only them on the screen. That's perhaps a technological solution. But yeah, no, that's it. For me, they're here to stay. So as much as if people don't like them, they're going to have to get used to them, is my view. So as we always try to do, Amy, top tips. Do you want to give your 3 top tips?
Top tips, yep. Albeit you actually stole one of them earlier, Andy. You stole one of them already in the podcast. But I'm going to repeat.
Don't say that, Amy. Anyway. People will think that we plan this to the absolute nth degree.
I'm going to say it anyway, though, because it is actually a very good tip. Google Chrome is the one, I think, where people have had issues with accessing CVP. It's because they've not been using the Chrome browser and they've been using one of the other internet browsers. So that's definitely something that's worth bearing in mind. I think the other top tip that I have is where I've been in hearings, obviously, for our employer clients, there's been a number of people that have been dialed in, so often a representative from HR as well as perhaps witnesses and either myself or counsel and things like that. And it's actually how are you going to communicate as a group whilst you're on the hearing, because obviously when you're all in person in a tribunal hearing room, where one of the witnesses or HR wants to pass a message to counsel, they can do so quite easily. Just write a note on a piece of paper and feed it down the line, and counsel can read whatever it is that they're trying to say. But obviously when you're in a CVP hearing, you're all in your own separate rooms, so you can't communicate as easily. And also I think there may be a chat function on the CVP portal, but it would send the message to everybody on the call, so not just people from your own party. So it is important that if there is one, you're mindful that it's kind of a public chat space, not kind of a respondent only chat space or a claimant only chat space. So I think
absolutely.
Yeah, so where I've done it, we've set up kind of WhatsApp groups and things like that so that people can stay in really quick communication if they need to.
WhatsApp is the way forwards. I'm sure there are other instant messenger services out there, but that's the method of choice.
And then my final tip would be just to give yourself time to log in, as you would with any other hearing. Get there early, and make sure you know what you're doing. If there are any technical problems as well, don't panic. Whilst hearings are generally working quite well, I have had a hearing where the claimant just kind of dropped off a couple of times, and all they did was dial back in, and it just kind of picked up. So it isn't anything to particularly stress out about if you do have technical issues.
No, agreed, Amy. Good top tip. You'll be pleased to hear I've pinched one of my own as well as I was talking. So I mentioned that the key is, that essentially you are looking at a bundle and at the hearing itself. So ideally you want to have two screens in front of you, whether that's, kind of a laptop and an iPad or a laptop and a separate monitor. If you can set it up that you've got two screens, do so. If not, then the documents, kind of almost have to be printed so that you've got that ability to cross-refer and to take your time to familiarise yourself with whichever document you are being taken to when giving evidence. And then the last two is remember it's a formal hearing. People sometimes forget they're in the comfort of their own home and potentially don't necessarily recognise that it is a formal court hearing. So dress appropriately. If you need to go to the bathroom or anything, do ask, excuse yourself. A judge won't not allow it, but they're less than impressed if people just stand up and disappear. That will cause frustration. And then thirdly, have a tidy room that you're giving evidence in. It's not strictly necessarily, it won't win or lose you the case, but it may stop embarrassment if, and I've seen it on a number of occasions, not all judges do it, but some have, where the witness is asked to pan the camera around the room so that the judge can be sure that nobody is there prompting or assisting the witness in giving evidence. And one particular witness was mortified that she was in what she described as a dumping room, the spare box room, which is where I guess lots of us end up working from. So have that in mind, that you may need to show what's in your room. And if you're not bothered, fine, don't worry, leave it as it is. If you are a little bit house proud, then bear that in mind. So that draws to a conclusion our Shoospeak HR podcast for this week. We've done it without Amy Leach, so she in fact she won't be back next week. Amy, do you want to give a little plug for what's coming?
Yeah, no, I'm on my own next week without Andy or Amy, discussing how to set up effective LGBT networks within organisations, and I'm joined by a partner from our Manchester office, Michael Briggs and Dave Richards from Capital One.
Yeah, so it should be good, and obviously the timing of that coinciding with the awareness month is all good. So I'll look forward to tuning into that, hearing how that goes, Amy. Thank you as ever for listening. If you do have any queries on virtual hearings or preparing for them, or any related issues, feel free to drop us a line. Shoospeak HR at shoosmiths.co.uk, and we'll look to respond as soon as we can. But thanks again for listening.